There's a tiny island surrounded by the stunning clear Red Sea and a bustling underwater world. Zabargad, also known as St. John's Island, has no trees and consists mostly of peridotite, which is rich in peridot. And before you Google it, peridotite is a gemstone that has the nickname the Evening Emerald because of its sparkling green hue. Some historians believe Cleopatra herself loved peridots, and that lady could afford any jewels in the world. Geologists believe peridot forms as a result of the spreading of the seafloor. When the Earth's crust decides to part ways, rocks from deep down get pushed up to the surface. That's exactly how our treasure island formed. The African and the Asiatic continental plates bumped into each other, and rocks in the lower crust went above sea level. Peridot also comes from meteorites that have crashed into Earth, but that's really rare. Its color ranges from a brown-green color to yellowish-green to pure green. Yellowish-green is the most common shade you'll see in jewelry. This color is possible thanks to a good amount of iron in the stone. The deposits of this beauty are spread all across the world, from Vietnam to Arizona and Hawaii, Tanzania, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Norway. And then, of course, there's Zabargad. So, this place is geologically unique as it's an island built of uplifted mantle, and it's also the oldest and longest known source of peridots in the world. The first people came here for the Gemstones many centuries ago. Famous Roman philosopher Pliny the Elder mentioned in his writings that pirates had discovered Zabargad's treasures in the year 500 before the current era. The beautiful green rocks made their way to Queen Bernice of the Roman Empire. They came from the ancient trading port Berenike on the edge of Egypt's eastern desert. When the city fell in the 6th century, all work stopped, and the island with all its treasures stood alone for hundreds of years. In the 19th century, British explorers found the beautiful green island in the Red Sea and figured out it was the one described by Pliny the Elder a long time ago. Turkey did some mining here in the 20th century. Over just 4 years, they managed to collect over $2 million in peridots. They sent the gemstones to France for cutting. The work conditions on the island were nothing like a tropical fairy tale you could imagine. There was no drinking water for workers, so they had to install a gas-powered water condenser. Now, this territory belongs to the Elba National Park System. Most people come here to see the underwater beauties of the reefs. But if you look above the water, you can still see some beautiful sparkling peridots. If Christmas Island in Australia is on your travel list, plan the trip wisely. If you end up there in October or November when the wet season begins, you won't be able to enjoy a walk around. Red crabs cover the whole island like a blanket. And it's not one of those fluffy blankets you want to wrap yourself into. Over 100 million crabs are on a mission to reach the shore alive, marking a crucial phase in their life cycle. For the majority of the year, these red crabs reside in burrows and rock crevices. They have fruits, berries, fallen leaves, and various organic matter to keep them going. But when the dry season is over and the moon is in a specific phase, they know it's time to go. When they reach the coast of the Indian Ocean after several days of migration, they create deep burrows where females will eventually hatch their eggs. Once the burrows are ready, the male crabs return to the rainforests and the females stay at the beach for at least 12 days to keep the family going. The new parents are so smart, they follow the moon to pick the perfect moment with a milder tide to carry their eggs to the water. Once they hatch, the crabs bring their new family members back inland. There, they wait for the rainy season again to keep the circle of life going. To safeguard this magic, authorities close road in areas where crab migration takes place. Japan has a brand new addition to its archipelago. The world's newest landmass literally popped up in November 2023. This unnamed island is just over 300 feet in diameter. It's made of pumice and tuff left by an undersea volcano that kicked off its eruptions in October. The volcanic hustle has quieted down since then, and the waves are eroding chunks of the newly found land. Without lava flows to create a sturdy protective crust over the soft volcanic debris, the future of this freshly formed island is unstable. Similar islands had popped up before but were short-lived and vanished once volcanic activity ceased. An island born in 2021 the same way is still visible today though, so the newborn island might have some life prospects. If not, we're likely to see more territories like this. Japan is super rich in active volcanoes on land, with over 100 in its collection. If you make friends with the Uros people living in the Lake Titicaca area and ask them for their address to send a postcard, they will have a hard time answering. Their ancestors from more than 500 years ago came up with a brilliant invention to protect themselves from the Incas. They built islands from totora roots and reeds that could be moved away from danger deep into the lake. Totora plants help the local community a lot since it's water-resistant and is used for all sorts of things, from building boats to roofs and mattresses. The islets are even edible, and the flowers of the plant they're made of are used for tea. So there are around 120 islets still preserved, and over 1,000 people can live on them. From 2 to 6 families share one islet home. Since there's no need to run away from the Incas anymore, they need to make sure the islets stay in one place. Every 15 to 20 days, the reeds forming the islets decay and need to be replaced. To prevent constant drifting, locals use eucalyptus rods as anchors, firmly securing the islets. Despite their small size, these islets have 2 spoken languages. The residents craft their fabric and create stunning outfits. Solar panels provide sufficient power for them to have light and even TVs. The main islet has a radio station, and the locals have embraced tourism. You can make a reservation online and experience the floating life yourself. Some islands pop out of nowhere, and others disappear without a trace. One of the most famous so-called phantom islands is High Brazil off the coast of Ireland. Before you ask, no, it doesn't have anything to do with Brazil. High is a variation of I, which means island, and Brazil comes from the root bres, meaning mighty, great, beautiful in Irish, and it gave the name to one of the local deities. This tiny mist-covered island was first mapped in 1325, but later attempts to pinpoint its exact location didn't come to one result. So, legend has it that the island appears only once in 7 years, and even those who claim to have seen it say they had just sailed right through it without bumping into any land. Captain John Nisbet shared the story of how he had not only spotted High Brazil, but got stranded on it with his crew. According to him, the island boasted a castle and was mostly uninhabited. There was even an encounter with an ancient grave gentleman who shared the island's ancient history over a lavish feast. In the late 15th century, a series of expeditions set sail from Bristol to find the famous island. All attempts failed, and High Brazil disappeared from the maps in 1865. We might never find out if it was there in the first place, but it's a beautiful story anyway. Check out the cool map of New Orleans, USA. See those bold gray lines around the city? Those are levees keeping the city safe from the red flood coming in from Lake Maurepas, Lake Salvador, and Little Lake. Without those levees, New Orleans would be in big trouble with rising sea levels. Even with the levees, the damage looks pretty bad. The Biloxi and Jean Lafitte Wildlife Preserve look like they're almost underwater on the map. New Orleans is not the only city in the U.S. that's at risk of going underwater. The city of Savannah is located right in the middle of Hurricane Central. But even without Mother Nature's fury, the place is facing some serious sea level rise. The Savannah River to the north and the Ogeechee River to the south might both overflow into the surrounding marshland. And that's not even the worst part. By 2050, there may be massive floods every year that will make history books look boring. Sorry to break it to you, but Miami is on the line too. The Sunshine State is shelling out around $4 billion to stop things from getting worse, especially in Miami Beach, a hotspot for tourists. As of now, over 1,200 houses are at risk of flooding. The Big Apple is also getting hit with more and more crazy floods. In November 2021, they even had their first ever flash flood emergency. But still, the city is not ready for it at all. Even the Statue of Liberty, one of the most famous spots in NYC, got messed up in Hurricane Sandy. Now with sea levels rising, Lady Liberty is in danger once again. Tabasco, Mexico is no stranger to flooding, thanks to its coastal location on the Gulf of Mexico. This low, flat state is covered in wetlands and forests and already deals with seasonal floods. But with sea levels rising, it could eventually be completely taken over by water. This would put at risk some seriously important things, like the Mayan ruins of Malpasito and Comacalco and Tabasco sauce. The sauce comes from Louisiana. Jokes aside, it's not just Tabasco. Parts of the Yucatan Peninsula and Baja California are also at risk from rising sea levels. Panama City is also in trouble. Apparently, the super trendy Casco Viejo and the swanky Costa del Este hood might get submerged in 2050, when Pedro Arias de Avila first founded it. Fun fact, it was the first European settlement on the Pacific coast. The 17th and 18th century forts on the Caribbean side are also in danger. According to Climate Central, they might get washed away by rising sea levels. Even UNESCO has had them on its risk list since 2012. Some more sad news. The Bahamas is going to be hit hard by rising sea levels. I mean, Hurricane Dorian was already a huge bummer in 2019. And now, they're saying most of Grand Bahama, Nassau, Abaco, and Spanish Wells could go underwater by 2050 due to various reasons. Amsterdam. The Netherlands is one of the Low Countries for a reason. The city and its buddies Rotterdam and Den Haag sit low and close to the North Sea. You gotta hand it to the Dutch though. They know how to handle the water and keep it at bay with high-tech flood defenses. With sea levels constantly on the rise, it looks like their impressive system of dikes, dams, barriers, levees, and floodgates is going to get even more crucial in the future. Still, despite all the effort, some experts are afraid that the Venice of the North might go underwater by 2030. Well, this one is not something you would expect, but still. Venice is sinking by 2 millimeters every year, and the sea levels are rising. This means that the city is getting flooded more often, and it's only going to get worse because of climate change. Just like New Orleans, Venice has a flood defense system, but as the crisis gets worse, it's going to be harder and more expensive to keep it going. Even worse, beautiful St. Mark's Basilica has already been hit hard by flooding. They tried to introduce a flood barrier system, but even that didn't work out perfectly. In 2020, the flood barrier was not used and St. Mark's Square got majorly damaged. Looks like even when we try to prevent the effects of climate change, things don't always go according to plan. In London, rising sea levels are causing more flooding along the Thames estuary, and it's not looking good. Areas along the River Thames are especially at risk, putting iconic buildings like the Tower of London and the House of Parliament, as well as cultural hotspots like the Tate Modern and Shakespeare's Globe in jeopardy. And the British Museum? It has so much precious stuff, even Gollum would be jealous. We just can't let it go underwater. During your next Euro trip, make sure to add Bruges in Belgium to your list. Chances are you won't see it if you skip it this time. The thing is, it's also in danger of getting flooded. Bruges is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so we really hope they can protect it from any potential floods. Plus, it has a lot of nice local specialties we don't want to lose. You may not know it, but Andalusia in Spain is home to Western Europe's oldest city, Cadiz. It's been around for over 3,000 years thanks to the Phoenicians. But unfortunately, climate change is putting it at risk. Rising sea levels might flood the city's cobbled stone center, beautiful tree-lined plazas, and historic sea fortifications. And it's not just Cadiz. Parts of Andalusia are in danger of flooding too. Well, seems like one more destination must be added to your bucket list. Ho Chi Minh City, and especially its eastern marshy districts, are at risk, just like all the other places mentioned before. And it looks like the whole city is going to have a tough time with the Mekong Delta. While the main part of the city probably won't be completely submerged by 2030, flooding and storms are definitely going to become a big problem. So, it turns out that Bangkok might be in some hot water due to global warming. Literally, a 2020 study says that Bangkok could be one of the cities most dramatically affected by rising sea levels. It's sitting pretty low at just 5 feet above sea level. And to make things even more interesting, it's sinking at a speedy rate of an inch per year. And the cherry on top? The soil it's built on is super dense clay, which means it's basically a flood magnet. By 2030, parts of Bangkok, including the main airport, might have to get used to living underwater. The next city at risk is Kolkata, India. The fertile land in West Bengal has been a major key to their success for ages, but now it's causing some big worries in Kolkata and the surrounding areas. Just like Ho Chi Minh City, they could have some serious problems with all that rain during monsoon season. And the map of what could happen in 2100 is pretty scary stuff. The next destination is Shanghai, China. It's literally translated as the city on the sea, but it might actually end up under the sea. Climate control data is flashing red warning lights for this megacity, making it one of China's most at-risk cities. The Yangtze Delta, where Shanghai sits, and the Pearl River Delta, home to the Guangzhou, are both in hot water too, with lots of people living on low-lying land that might get flooded. The Maldives, a luxurious group of islands, already get flooded every year. Experts think they might lose 80 or even more % of their islands in the next 30 years. The Maldivian authorities aren't taking any chances though. They're already making plans to buy land in other countries, just in case they need to relocate the whole population.
In Asia, there's a bridge that is way longer than you'd think should even be possible. The HZMB stretches 34 miles over open water, which makes it the longest sea bridge in the world. So if something this massive can make it across rough waters, why can't New Zealand just build a bridge between its two main islands? After all, we're talking about a distance of just 14 miles. And a bridge like that could seriously change life for both locals and tourists. People could just hop in a car and drive from Wellington to Picton. No more ferry hassles, no more drawn-out trips. Just one epic road journey with ocean views on both sides. So what's stopping them? Well, turns out, everything. I mean, building a bridge there is technically possible, but there are a couple reasons why experts are like, maybe not. Let's start with the obvious, the distance. The North Island and the South Island are separated by Cook Strait. Like I said, it's 14 miles wide at its narrowest point. That's not much, true. Plus, we've got the HZMB bridge, proving that, yep, it is technically possible to build a bridge over the sea to cover that distance. But we can't ignore the fact that New Zealand's geography is, well, a whole different ballgame. Cook Strait isn't exactly a calm, friendly stretch of water. It's deep, really deep. Parts of it drop to about 10,000 feet. That's like stacking 7 Empire State Buildings on top of each other. It's also a rough, moody stretch of ocean that loves tossing around ships like rubber ducks. In fact, quite a few have been wrecked in Cook Strait. And sadly, many lives were lost. You don't have to worry about it so much though, as the worst accidents happened a long time ago. The ships and ferries that cross it today are much safer. Even so, it'd be pretty hard to avoid getting seasick while crossing it. Things get even messier below the surface. The seafloor over there is uneven and unpredictable. What happens is that Cook Strait has opposing tides at each end, one where it meets the Tasman Sea and the other where it joins the Pacific Ocean. And they simply don't move together like you might expect. When the tide is high on one side, it's low on the other, and they're totally out of sync. So all that water rushes back and forth through the strait to balance things out, creating some really strong and messy currents in the middle. Then there's the weather. Cook Strait isn't just windy, it's probably one of the windiest places in the southern hemisphere. That's because it's located right in the middle of one of New Zealand's 3 big wind tunnels. Basically, there are places where the wind doesn't just come and go quickly. It sticks around, blowing hard for most of the year. And all of this happens because of something called the Roaring Forties. That's the name for the latitude band between 40 and 50 degrees south of the equator, where strong, persistent westerly winds are pretty common. Unlike the northern hemisphere, which has a lot of land at this latitude, the southern hemisphere is mostly ocean with just a few land masses, like New Zealand's South Island, Tasmania, and the southern tip of South America. So, these winds go wild because there's nothing to slow them down, and they just keep picking up speed. The gusts there can reach up to 150 miles per hour. So, imagine trying to cross a bridge in a car when the wind is actively pushing against you. That's not just unpleasant, it's super dangerous. Drivers can easily lose control of their cars with the wind pushing them sideways. And of course, that can lead to countless serious accidents. Now, let's talk about earthquakes. New Zealand sits right on the boundary of two massive tectonic plates, the Indo-Australian and Pacific plates. It's basically in the middle of a collision zone. And about 14,000 earthquakes happen in and around the country every year. Of those, only about 200 are big enough to be felt. Still, building a massive bridge under these conditions would require some serious genius-level engineering. With all that in mind, we can safely say that the whole bridge idea is off the table. But how about an underwater tunnel? Yep, that could work. It could be a great solution actually. No wind, no bad weather, and no earthquakes to deal with. There are a bunch of other advantages too. First, it would dramatically reduce travel time, cutting down the 3 to 4 hour sailing trip between the North and South Islands. That same journey would probably only take about 40 minutes. Then people wouldn't have to stress about all the ferry cancellations and delays because of bad weather. And most importantly, it's doable. I mean, look at the Channel Tunnel. It's an undersea tunnel connecting southern England and northern France. Japan did something similar with the Seikan Tunnel, which connects the islands of Honshu and Hokkaido. They are both huge projects, serving pretty much the same purpose. So why on earth isn't New Zealand already building this tunnel? Well, for the same reason we don't all live in luxury treehouses with personal robots: money. Estimates vary, but some experts think a project like this could cost anywhere from $10 to $20 billion. To cover that kind of cost, they'd probably need to charge tolls for the next 100 years. And trust me, those tolls wouldn't be cheap. Other experts think it could actually cost more than that. Because you see, we have to consider all the extra infrastructure. The narrowest point of Cook Strait is between the North Island and Arapawa Island. That's one of the long, mountainous regions in the Marlborough Sounds, which is pretty remote. So it's not just about the cost of the bridge or tunnel itself, it's also the access roads, safety systems, maintenance, and evacuation plans. You can't just build a huge underwater tunnel and not plan for the occasional emergencies. And what would it actually be used for? Sure, there are people who travel between the islands. About 1 million passengers take the ferry every year. But that's not exactly the kind of traffic that justifies the most expensive infrastructure project in the country's history. Earlier, we talked about how England and Japan have similar underwater tunnels. But there's something to consider. The United Kingdom has a population of 69 million. Japan has even more, with around 123 million people. And in New Zealand, they've only got 5 million residents to pay for this project. So could they have a tunnel under Cook Strait? Sure they could. Should they? Probably not. If you don't want to fly, the only other way to travel between the islands is by ferry. It's not ideal, but hey, it works. New Zealand has a total of 5 ships that transport people and vehicles across the islands. For tourists who aren't in a rush, it's perfect. You can cross the islands while taking in some of the most stunning views and spotting amazing wildlife. You'll start your trip in Wellington, and right from there, you'll see the rugged North Island coastline as you head out into open water. You might see different seabirds like gulls and terns, and as you get closer to the South Island, you might spot some gannets. If you're lucky, you could also catch a glimpse of the seal colonies off the coast. During the last hour of the trip, the ferry will slow down, giving you plenty of time to enjoy the green hills and calm waters. You will also approach Queen Charlotte Sound, a spot known for its wildlife. So keep an eye out for orcas, playful dolphins, and even penguins. Honestly, having a ferry instead of a tunnel might not be so bad after all.
Question for you. Does the island of High Brazil sound familiar? You've surely never seen it on a vacation brochure. Not because it's exclusive or hard to reach, but because it's like the ultimate mashup of myth and reality. Some people believe it's just a figment of imagination, while others swear they've seen it with their own two eyes. According to historians, the island of High Brazil has been noted in both travelers' records and ancient Irish legends. It makes this location an Irish version of Atlantis, although it's known by several other names too. The island takes its most famous name from Brisal, an important figure in Celtic folklore. It's also been spotted on maps dating back to 1325. One cartographer, for example, placed it west of Ireland, while subsequent sailing charts have shown it more specifically southwest of Galway Bay. Now, here's where things get even weirder. Two people have claimed to have found the island on their separate voyages. They returned home with almost identical descriptions of High Brazil, which they dubbed the Promised Land. A Catalan map from around 1480 also places the island in the southwest of Ireland, confirming a similar location for this mythical place. Now, here's the craziest part of all. High Brazil is said to appear on maps as a perfect circle with a semicircular channel through the center. Two explorers claim they separately walked the shore of the island to determine where it ended, but they never found it. Most likely, looking at those drawings, even if the island ever existed at one point, they were just walking in circles. One of the most famous visits to High Brazil was in 1674 by a British captain named John Nesbitt of Killybegs. He and his crew were in familiar waters west of Ireland when the fog suddenly appeared in their path. When it lifted, they found themselves dangerously close to rocks. The ship anchored nearby, and 4 crew members rowed ashore to visit High Brazil. They spent a whole day there, and even came back with silver and gold given to them by an old man who they claimed lived there. Legend has it that another sighting of this mythical place was several years later, when a fellow claimed to have met an old man who had been there himself. Could he be the same old man from the previous story? Now, this old man remembered spending a couple of days chilling on High Brazil and even seeing on the horizon some familiar places from the west coast of Ireland while walking on its shores. Another man went on a trip in 1872 to find this mysterious island, and he swore he had seen it too. It was right there in front of him. But then, as quick as a wink, it vanished into thin air. Was this island ever real? That's up for debate. We can't deny, though, that there are so many stories and legends about this place that it's hard not to be curious. We've only recently figured out that this next island doesn't exist. Does Sandy Island ring any bells? It's been causing quite a stir since 2012, when it was discovered that the island, which was previously featured on maps, including Google Earth, was just a figment of our collective imagination. People had been searching for this phantom island for years. It was recorded at one point by a British ship way back in 1876, and even appeared on a British map in 1908. Though numerous expeditions had failed to find the island, it remained on some maps until it was finally removed. But how did we finally figure out that Sandy Island was just a myth? Well, a group of scientists from the University of Sydney decided to take matters into their own hands and visually confirm the island's existence. Maybe even take a photo or two while they were there, right? But when they arrived at the supposed location, they found the ocean sitting there all by itself with no piece of land in sight. Most likely the crew of the British ship may have just mistaken a pumice raft for an island. Pumice rafts are floating rocks that form from volcanic activity and are known to float past the area where Sandy Island was supposed to be. Let's move on to this next story about another fictitious island. A tale about a fellow named Robert Perry. You see, back in the day, Perry was trying to gather some money to fund his much-wanted Arctic expedition. So, what does he do? Well, he decides to create a whole new island out of thin air. Talk about creative marketing, or a scam, take your pick. Perry called this mythical island Crockerland, after his pal George Crocker, who had given him some money for one of his previous expeditions. Perry claimed to have discovered this island during his 1906 trip to the Arctic, but it was all a big fib to try and get more investments from his buddy. Perry even went so far as to write a book about his fake discovery called Nearest the Pole. Surprisingly, people did fall for it. Other explorers even started searching for the fictitious island. Despite it never existing at all, Crockerland appeared on maps created between 1910 and 1913. It was even referred to as a whole continent in some circles. People were so intrigued, they even named it the Lost Atlantis of the North. Eventually, Perry's little scheme was uncovered, and the truth about Crockerland was revealed. This next mysterious island also seems to enjoy playing hide-and-seek with its visitors. Back in 1821, a man claimed he stumbled upon an island close to Antarctica and decided to give it a special name, Emerald Island, after his ship. But this island seems to have a bit of a quirky personality, as it likes to disappear whenever it feels like it, leaving explorers scratching their heads and wondering if they're losing their marbles. Some people claim they've seen the island with their very own eyes, while others say it's nothing but a myth. Some say it moves around like a sneaky ninja, which is why it's so hard to find. Recollections may vary, sure, but here's where things start to get fishy though. Even those who claim to have seen Emerald Island can't seem to agree on what it looks like. Some tell stories about a towering mountain with cliffs, while others insist it's a lush green forest with rolling hills. One captain even claimed it was small and rocky, with no place to land. Despite all the confusion, there have been a couple of interesting incidents around the supposed location of the island. In 1894, a Norwegian expedition to the South Pole thought they had finally found the elusive island, only to realize it was just an iceberg. In 1949, the crew of a ship from New Zealand got excited when they spotted what they thought was Emerald Island, but it turned out to be a group of clouds hanging out on the water. This next island was supposedly found by a certain Captain Daniel Doherty. He claimed to have stumbled upon an island far south in the Pacific Ocean during a trip from New Zealand to Canada in 1841. He named it Doherty Island, after himself, of course. Several other sailors also claimed to have seen the island, confirming its existence. However, one Captain Scott couldn't find it when he passed by its supposed location in 1904. Did it magically disappear? The icing on the cake came on August 11, 1931, when an Australian newspaper reported that a joint British, Australian, and New Zealand expedition sailing to Antarctica passed by the supposed location of Doherty's Island and couldn't find it. The commanding officer of the ship noted the details of the incident, stating that the vessel passed directly above where the island was said to be. The weather was clear, and there was no island within a considerable radius, so it couldn't have been hiding anywhere else. And, just like that, Doherty Island was removed from British maps in 1937 as if it never existed. Hey, sometime, remind me to tell you the story of Brightside Island, a fanciful place located smack dab in the Internet Ocean. The Azores are 9 islands in the Atlantic Ocean, sitting about a third of the way from Europe to North America. A history textbook will tell you that the Portuguese explorers discovered this beautiful archipelago in the 15th century. Until then, they were uninhabited. The islands still belong to Portugal, so there seems to be no controversy or mystery here, except for the fact that some researchers think the Azores were home to an ancient civilization from thousands of years ago. Others support the idea that the famous Atlantis itself was here. In 2010, archaeologists announced that they found some structures on the islands which looked like they were from the Stone Age. If that's true, It would mean that there was a civilization back then which was advanced enough to travel this far and settle on the remote islands. A special scientific commission studied the matter and concluded that those structures were natural rock formations or had a more modern origin. So the first settlers were supposed to have been the Portuguese. It didn't stop some enthusiastic scientists from further research. They analyzed the DNA of mice from the Azores and found that it had the same genetic characteristics as house mice from northern Europe. The little rodents couldn't have sailed this far without humans, so it looks like the first people had arrived at the Azores before the Portuguese, and the plot thickens. Dr. Felix Rodriguez, who works at the University of the Azores, is determined to find out exactly when it happened. He's studying the megalithic structures found in the Azores. Similar structures found in Western Europe and the Mediterranean date back to the Neolithic age. According to Dr. Rodriguez, the oldest findings are from 4,200 years ago. It's not clear when civilizations left them. The professor identified 7 megalithic structures in one complex as dolmens for the deceased. The cavities are all cylindrical in shape and definitely don't look like a natural formation. The material from the cavities turned out to be at least 2,500 years old. There are also some pieces of ceramics that seem to be even older. It looks like the rocks in the area had been lifted. You can see it by the small waves left by lava. It's thick and sticky, so it can't leave vertical marks. Someone must have moved the rock from its horizontal position. Another interesting finding is some stone anchors with holes found by the sea. Similar ones were used in the Mediterranean and on the Atlantic coast of Europe, dating back to 1000 and 2000 BCE. The 15th century Portuguese were advanced sailors and never used stone anchors, only metal ones. The scientists also managed to find a structure built right in the volcanic tuff. It looks somewhat similar to the ones built in the Mediterranean that are at least 2,000 years old. These structures are called columbariums and were used to store the ashes of the deceased. They also found something resembling an oven next to it, so they could be a part of one complex. There's also a basin in the middle, and it's not the only one on the island. It looks like they had a special meaning to their builders. There are channels around the construction. They connect the 4 basins, and the sun lights each of them at different times of the year. It was all carefully planned, as they were lit the brightest during winter and summer solstices and autumn and spring equinoxes. The water passed through all the basins and went directly into the sea. It could have been a purifying ritual. Now, some people are skeptical about the findings and believe they're all parts of a fortress from the 16th century. Professor Rodriguez is determined to prove it's all much, much older. There must have been some ancient civilization here that could have left because of the volcanoes that go crazy every 50 years. Antonieta Costa, a postdoctoral student at the University of Porto in Portugal, is also sure that the first people came to the Azores in prehistoric times. She has studied standing stones with small openings, explained as cuts for quarrying the stones. Costa believes they are part of a calendar system. She noticed that none of the slits in the rocks were aligned with the cardinal east direction. The slits closest to it are smaller than the ones facing other directions, so it can't be just a coincidence. It also looks like the slits are aligned with the solstices, and that's what makes Costa think it could be a calendar. She also thinks the inscriptions left on slabs of bedrock on the islands are much like those maps that were left on the rocks during the Stone Age in mainland Europe. Another interesting theory about the Azores is that it could have been the location of the famous Atlantis, which was lost under the sea. Since the Azores archipelago is in the middle of an ocean, it could technically be a perfect place for that. A 20th century scholar quoted Plato to prove this theory was right. The Greek philosopher suggested that Atlantis was in between the continents. The coins and sculptures supposedly found in the Azores when the Portuguese just arrived also point that there was someone else present there. And way more recently, in 2013, a sailor found a huge structure looking like a pyramid off the Azores coast. It was most likely a large submarine volcano, but it's much cooler to think it was some big deal in Atlantis, right? Peru has its own mystery. Amid the desert, you can find some eerie marks called the Nazca lines. They're known as geoglyphs and were created more than 2,000 years ago by the people of the Nazca culture. Thanks to a dry climate and strong winds in the desert, most of the Nazca lines have reached our day. To create them, Nazca people removed the top layer of the pebbles and revealed the soil beneath the ground. The color of the soil changes from reddish-brown to yellowish-gray, so the lines always look different. Most of the geoglyphs depict plants and animals. You can clearly see a monkey, a whale, a condor, a hummingbird, a spider, various flowers, trees, and other plants. There are also some geometric shapes, such as triangles, trapezoids, and spirals. Since they were discovered in the 1920s, scientists have offered different explanations for the lines. Some say that in Nazca culture, people ascribe special significance to these motifs, so they probably created these shapes for deities in the sky to see. Others believe they were a sort of astronomical calendar, and animal sketches were modeled after groups of stars. This theory was proved wrong, so the purpose of the lines remains a mystery. Another place that leaves many questions is Nimrut Mountain in Turkey. This mountain has a complex of monuments with temples and tombs. It was built by the Kingdom of Commagene, which ruled here around the 1st century BCE. There are statues of King Antiochus, 2 lions, 2 eagles, Zeus, Hercules, and Apollo. Archaeologists found the ruins of this complex at the end of the 19th century. They thought it had been built by the Assyrians. Then, some of the most famous scientists of the time came here and found an inscription in Greek. It had details about the sculptures and the names of important members of the Commagene royal family. It looked like it had been put there for future visitors. The scientists established that the statues used to be full-size figures. Changes in temperature, strong winds, snow, and the bright sun didn't leave them a chance to last in all their original glory. Plus, the complex is in an earthquake zone, so all you can see now is mostly the heads of the statues. They look incredibly complex and large for their time. The biggest question is, how did the people who lived thousands of years ago manage to create such huge sculptures on top of the mountain? It's obvious that they worked on shaping the limestone blocks up there and not on the ground. So, stay tuned. We'll keep an eye on this.
Even in 2023, you can still find places where modern humans have never been. Imagine living on one of such isolated islands. You wouldn't know about modern civilization or have seen a person from the outside world. One such island is located in the Bay of Bengal in India. It's called North Sentinel Island, and getting there is strictly forbidden by law since the mid-20th century. Even if you try to reach there, the Indian Coast Guard won't allow it. But that's not the only hurdle you'll face. Say you have decided to reach this island in a small boat. The water is crystal clear, and you can see all sorts of fish swimming around as well as some gorgeous coral reefs. And then you see the island in the distance. It looks like a dream come true. But before you can even think about getting any closer, you notice some dots on the shore. Suddenly, something whizzes past you and lands in the water. Wait a minute. Is that an arrow? Yep, and the next one hits the side of your boat. Looks like someone on the island really doesn't want visitors. Turns out the dots on the shore are people. The local Sentinelese tribe, armed with spears and bows. They start shouting something at you in a language you can't understand, but their gestures imply that you should leave immediately. If that wasn't clear enough, they throw spears and shoot arrows at you. Yeah, that's definitely a clue you're not welcome here. It's not just you they're aggressive towards, though. They're known for guarding their island fiercely and don't want anyone else to come in. Even helicopters can be attacked when they fly too close. That's why the authorities have made it illegal to visit the island. It's not just to keep tourists safe, but also to protect the islanders themselves. The Sentinelese people have lived in isolation for thousands of years, and they have no immunity to modern diseases. Even a simple cold could wipe them out. Despite the risks, some people have tried to make contact with the Sentinelese tribe. They want to befriend them and learn about their way of life. And in some cases, they have succeeded, but it's definitely not recommended. You never know how the locals will react. Interestingly, North Sentinel Island was visited by an officer named Maurice Vidal Portman in 1880. He found that the island was surrounded by coral reefs and limestone, and had fertile soil perfect for growing coconut palms. He spotted several villages on the island, but didn't approach the locals or explore the island further. Maybe he sensed that it was best to leave this paradise alone. In the past, researchers have attempted to establish friendly relationships with them by offering them fish as gifts, which the locals accepted, but still refused to allow any visitors to approach their home. Despite their complicated language, modern people were able to communicate with the islanders over several decades, and in 1991, one of the locals approached the boat that was carrying the gifts for the tribe and accepted them. In the same year, a group of locals even boarded the boat and took a bag of coconuts brought to them by a team of anthropologists. This was one of the last positive interactions with the tribe, as India's government has prohibited any interaction with the Sentinelese for their safety. There is another beautiful island located 25 miles off the coast of Brazil, which has a lighthouse that serves as evidence of modern humans' presence. However, there are no people on the island, and the Coast Guard occasionally check the lighthouse to ensure that no strangers have visited the place. People are not allowed to visit this island for their own good since it can be dangerous. So, what's wrong with Snake Island? The name will give you a hint. It's got like 4,000 snakes all over the place. Basically, one every 10 square feet. They slither on the ground and hang from the trees. And these are not just any snakes, but some of the most venomous in the world. They're called golden lanceheads, and they only live on this island. The snakes are so savage that they specialize on hunting birds that come here to rest during their long flights. The island used to be connected to Brazil, but it got separated by the sea about 10,000 years ago, and since then these snakes have ruled the roost. They're the kings of the island, and they have no predators to fear, but they don't have a lot of food options either, so they evolved to have super venomous bites to take down their prey easily. Anyway, enough about snakes. Let me tell you about another creepy island in Mexico. It is located in one of the canals in the area called Xochimilco, just 11 miles away from Mexico City. It's not forbidden to visit or anything, but it's pretty scary anyway. So have you heard of the Island of the Dolls? It's a creepy place filled with dolls hanging from trees and buildings. A guy in the 50s moved here alone from Mexico City and started hanging them up, and continued to do so for decades, making the place look like a haunted doll graveyard. But wait, it gets even creepier. The dolls have deteriorated over time, covered in moss and turned green. Some say they come to life at night. If that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies, I don't know what will. Now let me tell you about Bouvet Island, one of the most mysterious places on Earth. It's located in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,600 miles away from South Africa and 1,100 miles from Antarctica. It's super difficult to reach, and normally you can only do so from large ships passing by. The island is almost entirely covered by a glacier, and at its center, there is a volcanic crater. The only inhabitants of this place are penguins and seals. It's a perfect location for someone who wants to be alone, away from civilization. It was discovered in 1739 by a French explorer, but they didn't write down the location, so for almost 70 years nobody knew where it was. In the early 19th century, it was rediscovered, but it wasn't until 1927 that someone actually set foot on its shores. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, and some people decide to build a weather station there. When they arrived, they found something super weird, an empty lifeboat just chilling in a lagoon with a bunch of seals. It was in good shape, and there were oars and a buoyancy tank nearby. There weren't any markings or signs of who it belonged to, but it seemed like whoever had been on it had escaped from a wrecked ship. Strange thing though, there were no footprints or signs of people on the island, so where did the sailors go? Nobody knows. Let's finish with a completely safe and cute island in the Bahamas called Pig Beach. It's not the official name of the place, but everyone calls it this way because the island is home to lots of pigs. They spend their days swimming, sunbathing on the beach, exploring the jungle, and begging tourists for food. What's really cool is that you can stay at a hotel on a nearby island and take a boat to visit the pigs. They're super friendly and love attention, especially when there's food involved. And thanks to the kindness of tourists and locals, these cute little pink and brown piglets are able to survive on the island. No one knows for sure how the pigs ended up on the island. According to legend, they survived a shipwreck and swam to safety on Pig Beach. There are also a few cats and goats on the island, which adds to the animal farm vibes it's giving out. So if you're looking for a unique and adorable experience, Pig Beach is definitely worth a visit. Just remember to bring some snacks for the piggies.